this is the fun story on this one. We've been saving this for all of you. Mike Pence tiptoeing around, let's put this on the screen, tiptoeing away from Trump, laying the groundwork for a 2024 run, leaking it to the New York Times. By leaking it, I mean calling a reporter for the New York Times. And not saying that he's going to run, but just says that he's keeping his options open and he's looking at all of these things. And it's interesting because Pence is putting his case for the presidency based on what happened in Georgia. But that's incredibly foolish. Just because Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger are able to win in Georgia does not mean you're going to win a GOP primary. Some 50-something% of Republicans identify as Trump Republicans. Most registered Republicans, they like Donald Trump. Some are willing to and say they want to move on from him. But given the way that it works, if he was the one on the ballot, he would clearly have a runaway with it. And even then, if he were to have and enter a primary, he would win almost every single one by over 50%. I just think this is complete cope on the part of Mike Pence. And it just shows you that this is the real delusion and dream of a lot of people who look at the victories of a Brian Kemp and a Brad Raffensperger is, oh, we're just going to go back to the good old days of Reaganism and Mitt Romney. It's like, no, guys, because like I was telling you yesterday, who also won in that Georgia primary, Krystal? Marjorie Taylor Greene, okay? This brand of MAGA, it's here forever. Like, this is the Republican Party at this point. And a lot of these guys are just not able to fathom that things have moved so far past them. It's why Chris Christie failed in 2016, and it's why even his current bid in order to attach himself also to Kemp and all this is a fake media creation. So you have to be able to have the analysis in your head at the same time that Trump voters are willing to move past Trump in some certain instances, but that he is the unambiguous leader of the Republican Party, and any idea to the contrary is ludicrous. I think the only person who would garner more than 15, 25% of the vote, and I think would still lose, is Ron DeSantis if he ran against. And again, I think he would win maybe 25%, something like that. And I'd be like, oh, that's respectable. But I don't even think Pence could win, I don't know, maybe 10, 5, something like that.
I think they're kind of in a bubble. I mean, he's surrounded by people who think like him and, the type of Republicans that'll, like Pence, say sort of nice things about Trump in public, but privately have been unhappy with him as the president for a long, and were not into him in the primary and they're mostly disturbed that their little faction doesn't have control of the party anymore. That's really what it ultimately is. I mean, we see these same fights within the Democratic Party where it's not so much about principles or ideology as it is about, I want my band of grifters to be back in charge and to be back in control of the party. Because, ultimately, Trump and Pence stylistically are very different, but is Trump on a policy level much different than Mike Pence? No, not really. It was interesting. A lot of these differences are stylistic. I think there is definitely a difference between, I don't think Pence would have incited, January 6th and wouldn't have. Obviously, he stood as a bulwark against the whole idea of the fake slates of electors and all of that stuff. So that is a real difference, and I do think that matters. I don't want to downplay that. But in terms of policy, they're kind of basically more or less the same.
No question. Nothing's going to change on the policy front, but nobody votes on policy. What do we all learn? It's all about the style. That's simply, Biden was elected on vibe. So was Trump.
Well, I'm not sure
Okay, it matters.
When you have candidates who run campaigns that are devoid of policy, then yes, no one votes on policy. Yeah. But look at Kemp. I mean, I don't like what Brian Kemp has done as governor of Georgia, but the Republican base did. He was, these draconian voter laws and the CRT and abortion and guns and whatever. He did all the things they wanted him to do. And so, it wasn't just sort of signaling. It was based in large part on policy. So I thought it was interesting in this article. They talk about the speech that Pence gave down when he was in Georgia stumping for Kemp. And he said it was well received, if not overwhelmingly so. It had all the bearings of a Republican in Iowa leaning toward a presidential bid, knowing references to local polls, Midwest totems like John Deere, and attacks on the Democrats in power in Washington. Yet it also had the distinct air of a pre-Trump brand of republicanism, with only the slightest criticism of the news media, and that was even gloved with all due respect, references to becoming a grandfather, and G-rated jokes that could have just as easily been delivered by Mitt Romney. It involved Washington, D.C. and hot air. So there's sort of this desire to put the, I think he used the term boorishness of Trump and his acolytes. They don't like that. They don't like the lack of civility, you know, the overturning the apple cart at every turn. They kind of want to put that back in the bag. They want to get their band of consultants and grifters back in power. But ultimately, you know, clearly they don't have the hearts of the Republican base at this point. And so as much as we talked some this week about how Trump doesn't have quite the lock and hold on the Republican base as he used to, there is still no doubt that he is king of this party. And anyone who is thinking of challenging themselves and thinks they really have a chance are pretty much deluded.
I really don't get this. Yeah, this is a broader commentary on a lot of these never Trump folks. Like, just do what I did. Just be like, you know, the Republican Party is clearly not with me. And that's fine. You know, it actually is fine. To just be like, yeah, you know.
This is kind of liberating, actually.
It's very liberating. I feel great. I'm just like, yeah, I do what I do. You know, we do the show together and I say what I say. And, you know, occasionally praise somebody here, somebody there. I think that's how a lot of people engage with politics. There seems to be this need to be like, no, the party has lost what it is. You don't decide. The voters decide. The voters decide that they love Donald Trump. That's genuinely fine. It's just okay. You can move past it. Same with the Democrats. You can just be like, okay, the voters went with this way. That means I identify more with this particular faction. Every once in a while, you know, you have a collaboration on something. That's completely fine. And yet, there just seems this need to be like, I'm going to reclaim the old identity. Like, this is what we really stand for. It's like, no, you don't. You know, this is ultimately democracy is democratic. And I think that's just something that a lot of people don't really want to grapple with.
Yeah, well, then never Trump, a lot of them just too, they found a new grift. Yeah. Because they're the Rick Wilsons of the world. Like, their grift in the Republican Party was over.
100%.
So they found a new grift as the leaders of the resistance in the Democratic Party. And you know, weirdly sort of like immediately switched some of their cultural inclinations to fit the new friends and band of people that they're surrounding themselves with. So some of it is just that as well. And with Mike Pence too, some of it is just, you know, these people. I think he is the type that really sees himself as like, this is my destiny. Like, God has called me to be president of the United States. And so he's going to keep persisting in that faith that he's like, the special chosen one to lead the nation out of whatever crisis we're in.
Good point.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.